My name is Daniel Adam Fink. Thank you for enjoying the Yissma'eil bonus presentation and my previous presentations. This final presentation is focused on the connections between every biblical name, including such states as Edom, Moab, and Ammon, Yishmaelite provinces, and for the first time, the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah. For nearly 2,000 years, scholars have debated the locations and identities of the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah. In English, you may have seen them referred to as the Kenites, Kenizzites, and Kadmonites. Ken, Kenaz, and Kedemah are here shown in their precise locations in relation to Yissma'eil provinces and the states of the east. The remainder of this presentation will prove that these locations and identities are accurate. In this presentation, I will show the names, relationships, and identities of each place in 3 ways for multiple reasons. Different people prefer information to be shown in different ways. Another great reason for repeating items is that repetition is the key to memory. Most importantly, I'm using 2 types of map to convey information, the first being a relief map or an elevation map, and the second being a satellite map. In these 2 different types of map, one place may look one way from an elevation point of view and may look a different way from a landform color image point of view. This is what I refer to in each of my presentations as lying with maps. One perfect example of how maps are used for rhetorical purposes can be seen easily at the center of this map. Just above the center of this map is the word Moab. Directly south below Moab is a diagonal canyon. South of that canyon is a brown, rugged land feature that is in between the words Moab and Edom. Here on this map, that rugged land feature looks clearly connected to the plateau of Edom. In a future map, it will look far more connected to Moab. This plateau is in fact part of the Moab landform and part of the cultural region of Edom. I will now introduce land and water features from top center, which is north, to bottom center, south on this map, and then come back to introduce the next slide at a dashed line just south of center of this screen. At the very top north center, we see the name Damascus, which is Damascus, east of Mount Hermon. And southwest to the left and just below the word Damascus, we see south of the mountain an elevated part of the plateau. That's actually Jetur, that's the Jetur, that's the Eritrean plateau. South from that plateau, we come to a bright yellow tan area with a green colored body of water through it, and to the left of that, we see the name Yarmouk. Yarmouk is the heart of Bashan Bataniah. Then zigzagging back to the right, we see Gilead, which is an elevated mountainous land. And in the middle of that elevated mountainous land is the next body of water, the Yabok. Down from the Yabok to the right, again, we see Ammon, which is the city and the area surrounding the city. Next, to the left, we see the word Heshbon. So, this is the plateau Mishur. Mishur has many names, many sections, and different groups of people would control all or part of Mishur over and over and over again. This is the reality of why Kedemah is called Kedemah, and the people are called the Kedemah. We'll get deeper into exactly how and who these people were, but that is the nature of the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah. Disputed lands in between powerful city-states. So, down from Ammon, back over to the left again, at the center of the dark brown, which is the Dead Sea, we see the word Arnon. And that is the Grand Canyon of Jordan, as it is referred to. That's the Great Canyon of the Middle East, the Arnon. Down from the word Arnon south, the next name is Zered. These are the two streams, the two wadis, bodies of water, which define the Moab Plateau. That is the heart and center of Moab proper. Then, south, down from the word Zered, we see a dashed line with an arrow, which we will come to at the end of this particular slide. South from there is Feinan. So this is west of the area that is now extremely popular for visiting, Petra, the Wadi Dana. So that is the western side of the Wadi Dana biosphere. Between Feinan and the next word down, which says ledge, at the center of your screen, just down from the center, next to the word Edom, that is Mount Seir itself. Petra and Little Petra are within that mountain. Edom is the plateau to the east of Petra, and at the southern end of that plateau, we see a word on the left, ledge, and then down into the right southeast, another word, ledge. That's the precipice where the Edom Plateau drops down radically to an area that looks yellowish tan. That is the Wadi Ram peneplain. And south from there at the bottom center of the screen is Midian. So you can see the Wadi Ram peneplain is more of the landform Midian, but is in close proximity to Edom. That is the nature of Kenazi and Kedemah. They are frequently part of a landform of one powerful neighbor, but in closer proximity to another neighbor. Another example of that from that word ledge at the lower center of the screen, we're going to come up again to Feinan and then to the dashed line. That dashed line points to a diagonal northwest to southeast crack in the rugged mountainous area we were speaking of on the previous slide, being the Wadi Kenazir. That is the namesake of Kenaz. Now the sites and situations and relationships of these three names. Back down at the bottom center is the word Midian. Between Midian and to the left of it, Sinai, we have the Gulf of Aqaba, which separates them. Where they meet at the northern end of that gulf is green. That's the lower area, the Arabah, and to the right of that we have the word Kaini. So the Kaini are, as we were establishing, part of the landform of Midian. This is in fact the northern extent of the power base, the sphere of influence of Midian. However, it is physically close to Edom and is along the road from Eilat Aqaba, the Gulf of Aqaba, the northern end of it, directly next to the Kaini, going in the direction of Sinai. Then, north of there, the next word in red at the center of the screen, Kenazi. Right on that Wadi Kenazir is Kenazi. This is part of the landform that formed the Moab Plateau, as is Kedemah. They're both part of the landform of Moab. However, the Kenazi are separated from Moab with that great canyon, making them have a closer cultural connection to Edom. Likewise, the Kedemah, we have another great canyon separating them from Moab, and an easy-to-travel plain which connects the Kedemah to Ammon. Now directly up from the center of this screen, the furthest north word in red, Kedemah, I have added the word Yehudah. So Yehudah is Judea. This is directly west of Kedemah. Kedem means east. This literally is a plateau east of the heart of Judea. hence the name Kedemah. There will be other easts, other Kedemah, which supplement and explain exactly how and why this is the Kedemah. South again, the next word in red. Kenazi, as I was explaining, is on the Wadi Kenazir, the capital of Edom, as stated in the Bible and in historical documents. For spans of the existence of Edom is Batra. That city still exists today. It is directly on this body of water, the Kenazir. South again, to the furthest south, word in red is Kaini. Kaini at the Wadi Ram peneplain is where 4 great provinces converge. South of there, at the bottom of the screen, is Midian. North of there is Edom. To the southeast, down and to the right from the word Kaini, you see that lighter colored area. In that lighter colored area is the Spice Road. That's Mibsam. So Mibsam comes from places like Yemen, Arabia, and beyond, directly to the Wadi Ram. That's the Kaini. This is how they could achieve power. And from there, we go west and southwest to Sinai. This is why people have been confused. How could Yitro, Jethro, Reuel, Moshe's father-in-law, and how could Moshe be going from Midian to Sinai, yet Yitro is a Kaini, a Kenite? Now you can see this is exactly how and why that makes sense. Midian is a landform, all of that mountain area south of Edom. The Kaini occupied and migrated in and out of the Wadi Ram peneplain in that region. Here we are staying at south center, bottom center of the screen. At the very bottom center is Midian. Up from there are the Kaini. Next up is Edom. As you can see, east of Edom, you end up in a very flat area, which is the field of Edom. Continuing further north than there are the Kenazi and Moab. The field of Moab specifically means the area east of Moab. It actually would be further west than I'm showing in this map, but on a map, if you show everything exactly where it should be, the words get bunched up. Now, as we know from the Exodus journey, continuing past the field of Moab, we get to the eastern reaches of the Arnon Gorge, and that has a name. The name is Kedemoth. So Kedemoth is the area on the eastern edge of the Arnon. As soon as you pass there, where do you end up? You end up in the plateau of the Kedemah. That is the Moab Plateau. More evidence to follow. 2 great take-home messages from this slide. As you can see, I have added in blue the Yissma'eilites. Let's stay at the bottom center, the word Midian. To the east, slightly north and up from there, you can see Mibsam, the Mibsam province. And as you follow that province to the northwest, which is up and to the left, Hadad and Kaini are in the same area. This is the ancient Kaini and the Yissma'eilite Hadad. Kain means smith. So the word Kaini, the Kenites, means smiths. They of old were coppersmiths, which is the beginning of metallurgy on earth. Was working copper. It's soft enough to hammer and does not need to be heated up as much as adding tin or arsenic or other metals to make bronze. Hadad also means smith. This is a historical ancient area at the onset of all metallurgy in human history. The last name Hadad is quite popular amongst Jews and related kin groups of West Asia, North Africa, and beyond. Interestingly, pull Tiglath-Pileser III when he exiled and his successors exiled Hebrews to Syria, there's a Balich river valley where the surname Hadad is also popular still this day. So Keni means smiths, Hadad means smith, occupying the same area. In the Bible it is stated that the Keni from this region migrated north and northwest to the southern area of Judea. Now you can see how that makes complete sense because of who they were and where they were. Now we're going to go back up across these red letters just up and north from center, the Kadmonites. So you can see once we add Kedemoth down and to the right southeast of Kadmonites, then look up and to the right from Kadmonites we see Ammon, and to the right of them Kedem. So the Kadmonites, the place Kedemoth, and the Kedem Yissma'eilites are all in the same area spanning east of Yehudah and Samaria. That's Judea and Samaria, all grouped together in the area east of the hill country. Here on this slide is the setup for the remainder of the presentation. I have used Google Maps to give directions to places which are on Earth today as they relate to the entire story. Later in the presentation I will have slides which show Google Maps satellite imagery without this line. It's a little distracting, but it helps you to see where these places are and how they relate to locations in the past and locations today. The top left, this is Mount Sinai. For the rest of this presentation, north is going to be on the right, east is at the bottom. So I will do my best simply to say left, right, up, down. From the top left corner of Mount Sinai, we're going to go straight down across the Gulf of Aqaba to Midian. On Google Maps it's spelled with an A. I've spelled it with an E because it should be spelled with a schwa. And now we're going to go to the right, following the blue line. At the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba is a lot. Continuing, there's a spur off of the main blue road. And the remainder of this blue road is going to mostly follow the King's Highway, the King's Road. So we veer off the King's Road in the direction of Mibsam to the Nabatean Temple at the heart of the Wadi Ram peneplain. Continuing to the right from the Wadi Ram, this being Hadad and the Keni, we come to the place Wadi Musa. That is the heart of the field of Edom, the Edom Plateau. Directly west of there across the sea is Petra. Continuing to the right of there is the capital of Kenaz. On the Wadi Kenazir, Basira, that's ancient Batsra, the oftentimes capital of Edom. Continuing to the right, which is north, we see Karak, that is the heart and center of the Moab Plateau, the Moab Plain. Then the blue line comes down, which is in reality east, and then over to the right again. These words, Center for Civil Defense Driving, is the farthest east reaches of Ar and the Arnon. So this is east of Kedemoth. Then the road curves back again to Moses' Spring. This is Mount Nebo, Pisgah. This is the place where the overlook of Judea is located. So as you can see, Moses' Spring is directly down and east, and up west from that specific location is Jerusalem. Back to Moses' Spring. Next name to the right, that's Ammon, Ammon City and the city-state of Ammon. And finally, at the end of the blue line is Al-Mafraq, that is the Mafraq Plain. That is Yissma'eil Kedem, east of Gilead, which, as I have stated again to get you as used to it as you can, that being east of Gilead, as is stated in 1 Chronicles 5. Showing these bodies of water which divide landforms from the right. At the farthest right, as we come from the edge of the screen in the center, toward the left we see a bit of Lake Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, and the Yarmouk. From between the Yarmouk and the next word to the left, the Yabok, that is the heart of the province of Gilead. Continuing from Yabok to the Heshbon, we see the continuation of Gilead and the Ammon city-state. Then between Heshbon and at the center of the Dead Sea, the Arnon, that area is Kedemah. Next, from the Arnon to the left at the center of the screen, the word Bered. Those are the 2 canyons which defined Moab proper, the Moab Plateau. And from Bered, just left of center, we see Phanon. And in that spot directly down from the word Phanon is Batra on the Wadi Kenazir, the capital of Kenaz. Please keep your eye in that location. Here in the second of 3 sets of visual representations of Kenazi and Kedemah and how they relate to their neighbors, we can see how they locate along the King's Road. These are important places on the King's Road and major trading routes. For example, on the farthest left center we have Midian. Then as you approach Edom, we have the Wadi Ram Peneplain, that is the Kaini by the Nabatean temple. Then you get Edom, and then between Moab and Edom we have the Kenazi. And we continue along the King's Road, and then we get to the Kedemah as we head toward Ammon. So, there's going to be more evidence. The Kenazi, of course, the name is on the map today. The Kaini, we already explained. Kedemah, if you're already in doubt, we're going to explain exactly how does this Kedem relate to other Kedems, which I introduced before, but you can always show things in different ways. And the more you combine things, the more the explanation becomes clear. So let's keep an eye on the Kedemah and more evidence and interrelations. Here in this map we have the Kedemah, and now we have a larger dotted area. So one of the nice things about satellite imagery is being able to see landforms. Elevation is only part of the story. Landforms make things a lot more understandable. Now, east is the bottom of the screen. So, I know we're not all used to that. So, east of Kedemah is more east. So you see this very tan, uniform area. As I had already explained, and I will again in the future, east of Moab is the Moab Plain. Now, take a look at all of this plain, east of Kedemah, east of Ammon, east of Gilead, which is down on your screen. This is a very continuous area. It's a transition zone between cities, city-states, and political states toward the Midbar, that being the wilderness. And this is part of the wilderness. This is the part of the Midbar where you can actually have gazelles, and you can have sheep, and you can migrate, things like that. There's the Eastern Road. This is the Wilderness Road, the Eastern Road. That's where Al-Mafraq is located, the Center for Civil Defense Driving. The area east of the King's Road. And this yellow dashed area is the area east of Kedemah. And to the left, which is toward the center, that is east of Be'er Sheba, the southern tip of Judea. And to the right, as we go past Al-Mafraq, all the way toward Naphish, which is the brownish, tannish, greenish area, that goes all the way to east of Samaria. So this is truly the east. You can see on this slide I got ahead of myself. So a very clear representation of Judea and Samaria. So at the top right of the screen is the Mediterranean. If you look down to the red outlined shape, on the left is Yehuda, that's Judea proper. To the right is Samaria, that's Samaria proper. And beyond that, in that direction, is Galil, near the Sea of Galilee. That's the region of Galilee. Now that you have both of these outlines, you can see exactly where are all of these Kedem east names. East being again the bottom of the screen. I'm reminding you to remind myself. So, directly east of Jerusalem is Moses Spring. That is on the physiographic and physical plateau, the Moab Plateau of Kadmonites itself. That plateau has a boundary, the Arnon. The eastern end of that Arnon, between the words Kedemah and Center for Civil Defense Driving, is Kedemoth, the eastern end of the Arnon. As we continue right, we can see blue being Yissma'eil, Al-Mafraq, and the Mafraq plain, that's Kedem. So Kedemah, Kedemoth, and Kedem are east of Yehuda, Samaria, Ammon, Gilead. As is stated in 1 Chronicles 5, east of Gilead is Kedem. These are where Kedemah, Kedemoth, and Kedem are located. So they have three different names, three different identities, but a shared trait, east. Now that these names are combined on one screen, again, when there are this many names, they get confusing. So I'm going to go in order of, in this case, background. So background being red, top left, Mount Sinai. The area from Mount Sinai toward the rest of the map, that's Massa. So down from Mount Sinai across the Gulf of Aqaba, we have Midian, so we're staying red. Right and a little bit down from Midian, we have Edom, the Edom Plateau. That is Tema, Teman. So Tema means south. Tema, Teman happens to be south of these eastern states. Midian is a land beyond. Edom, Moab, and Ammon, we understand from the Bible of Moab and Ammon being kindred. And Edom is kindred with Yehuda. Midian is really a beyond. We don't even discuss Midian much until the Exodus route. In Genesis, it's mentioned, and that's about it. So Moab, Ammon, Gilead, I have added Yehuda, Samaria, and Galilee. Now, let's pay attention to the yellow and the blue. Yellow, Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah. So we can see as we go across the middle of the screen, left to right, in between these red important features. Midian, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Beyond them, as we go beyond that line, above, which is west, below, which is east, here is where we come across the Yissma'eilites. They are not located along the Rift Valley, that being where the Dead Sea, Galilee, and the Jordan, the Arabah are. They go beyond in directions toward, at the top, Egypt, at the bottom toward Arabia, Iraq, and Syria. This is their locations, and this is their functions. In this third and final presentation, I will construct the east and the south, beginning at the center of your screen. The brook or Wadi Zered. As you can see, there's a diagonal line. To the right of this line is the Moab Plateau, that is Moab proper. To the left of the line looks to be a continuation of the Moab Plateau, and it is. Remember, this looked more like a continuation of Edom on the previous slide, but here you can see physically this is a continuation of the Moab Plateau. So everything from the left of the Zered unto Mount Seir, which is that dark gray mountain, is Kenaz, and everything to the right is the Moab Plateau. Here in the center of the screen is Kenaz. This is part of the same landform as what is to your right, which is north, the Moab Plateau. However, the gorge of the Arnon is called the Grand Canyon of Jordan. It separates Kenaz so effectively that culturally Kenaz has been more closely affiliated and with a stronger affinity to Edom. Bear in mind, over time the Edomites were displaced northward and westward toward Judea. So, north of Edom is Kenaz. At times they had their capital within Kenaz, that being Botzra as stated in Genesis. And on the other side of Kenaz, which is to your right on this screen, that is north, is the Moab Plateau. And you can see beyond the Moab Plateau toward the northern end, which is the right end of the Dead Sea, is another similar plateau that is physically part of the same landform as Moab, which is also divided by a gorge. Now, Kenaz has two powerful states on either side of it. This is the next part of our story. So keep an eye on Kenaz and look to the right of Kenaz on the next slide. To the right of Kenaz, we see Moab, which is the Moab Plateau. Physiographically, this is part of the same province, the same landform as Kenaz. To the left, as you can see, it's a different landform. And to the left of Edom landform, the Edom Plateau, if you continue toward the left, as you approach the direction of the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, you see that the landform changes dramatically. And you're entering a different area of the earth, which was affected much more by the rift. Back to Moab on the right, as you can see, to the right of Moab, you see a very similar plateau as far as the plateau in between Edom and Moab that was Kenaz. To the right of Moab, a similar shape, similar size plateau. To the right of that plateau, you will see closer to the Dead Sea and the Jordan Rift Valley, a rolling hill territory with more varied terrain, more tree cover, and south of that and east of that, which is to the right of the bottom of the dotted line next to Moab, you see a gray area. That's the great city-state of Ammon. Here we see the site and situation of Kain, Kenaz, and Kedemah, home of the Kaini, Kenazi, and Kedemoni. On the right, Kedemah, you can see the dotted line which goes from the Dead Sea unto that gray area being Ammon. So here you notice how Kedemah is in between Moab Plateau, Moab proper, and the city-state of Ammon. This is a very important reality as far as understanding why these people are called the Kaini, Kenazi, and Kedemoni. So we know that Kenaz is a land in between powerful neighbors. Kedemah is affected even more so, as is stated in the Bible. Part of this land is called Dibon, God. So we know at one point this is controlled by the Gadites. We also know that Reuven, the Reubenites, control this area at times. Prior to them, it was ruled by the Amari, the Amorites. And at different times, the Bible states that this was originally possessed by Moab and was later possessed by Moab. Once Reuven and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they were displaced all the way over to what is now Syria by the Assyrians when they began their conquest, which would lead later to the 10 lost tribes, the Judean exile. So this is a disputed land in between more powerful neighbors. We've already discussed Kenaz as far as being physically and culturally part of Moab, culturally part of Edom. Then to the left is Kain. So Kain is downhill and separated from Edom. Meanwhile, to the left of Kain, to the Red Sea, you can see a very different physical area, a wedge of mountains wedged in between a plateau, which is in your far left, at the bottom left, occupying about 1/7 of the entire screen. That's Arabia. This is actually where the Jordan-Saudi Arabia border is around today. That is Midian. Now, let's go back to Kedemah. And you can see the dotted line which points to that gray area. At the end of the yellow highlighted dotted line, you see that gray area, the city-state of Ammon. And then above that, all the way to the Sea of Galilee, the Lake Kinneret, that is the mountain range of Gilead. We will continue to those neighbors on the next slide. On the right, you can see those two landforms and culture groups. Gilead being a continuous ridge, and Ammon being arguably the truest city-state in human history. This city has become enough power and population for so many thousands of years that the Bible states the Hebrews are not going to conquer Ammon. Ammon has such a large population that it is always going to continue to be its own city-state. It is one of the 10 most significant city-states in human history and has continuously been the dominant city of this area of the Levant since the late Stone Age. Gilead, of course, being a transitional physical province in between Ammon. To the right of Ammon on your screen, you see a tan area with some green dots. Those green dots are water. They're extremely important. And now let's look to the left. On the far left by the Red Sea, we see Midian. So, when you look at Midian, where I have placed the word, that is where the location of the actual ancient settlement, the city of Midian, is. And it's not spelled Midian. If you look it up online, it's actually M-A-D-Y-A-N because of the spelling errors of this schwa. Look at Midian. Look down, which is east on your screen, to the dashed black line with the white glow. If you follow that from the edge of your screen toward the middle of this screen, directly to the right of it, that's where the Kenites are. So you can see how physically the Kenites are more similar to Midian, but this is a different area. It's on the other side of those great mountains. And to the right of that is Edom. So, this is physically closer to Edom and the Edomite Plateau, but it is down quite a hill. down a slope and is more part of the landform of Midian. All of these Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah have these names and identities for that reason. The zone in between powerful neighbors. This slide shows the landforms and identities of the groups which surround Kain, Kenaz, Kedemah, the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah. To your left, by the Red Sea, Midian. To the right of that is Kain. So we understand when the Bible states that someone is a Kenite, which people are used to hearing as a Kenite, or even worse, a Kenite. These are the Kenites. How can they be Midianites if they're Kenites? That's just as simple as consider, from a European-centered point of view, Alsace. Alsace at times has been part of France. Alsace has been at times part of Germany. It's a physical area. So if you ask someone, is Alsace French or is it German? The easy response is, what year is it? That's the same, especially for the Kedemah, which we'll get back to. So that is how someone can be Midianite. Midian is a landform, and the people within that landform. The Kenites, they are somewhat within a landform, but they're very migratory. It's the kind of thing where, consider Irish. If these people are Irish, why are they in Boston? Why are they in New York and Philadelphia? If you combine the markets of Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, they have more people who identify themselves as Irish, or at least Irish Americans, than the entire island nation of Ireland. Back to the map. Midian, then Kain, then Edom. Edom has a namesake plateau, the Edomite Plateau, but as the Assyrians made their push westward, and they moved the Judeans into exile, the Babylonians, the Edomites migrated into southern Judea, and in turn, the Edom Plateau was no longer dominated by Edomites, it was dominated by Nabateans. So delta T, change over time. Consider also Poland. Where was Poland located several hundred years ago? Nearly entirely in a different place than Poland is today. To the right of Edom, Kenaz, which we have gone over thoroughly, which is extremely easy to identify. The Wadi Khanazir is there. Moab, Kedemah. Not only is all of Kedemah disputed, but fragments, sections, and segments are controlled by different people at different times. And then to the right of Kedemah is Ammon and Gilead. Now look to Ammon once again. Ammon, if I have lost you, go to the far right. Begin looking to the left until you start to see red words. You're going to see Gilead, and then you're going to see next Ammon. To the right of Ammon and down from Gilead is a tan region, and to the right of that you see a darker green, brown region. We're going to get to those next. In this slide on your far right, that is the northern end of this section of the Levant. You see the word in red, Damascus. It's also referred to as Damascus. We know it as Damascus. But in the Bible, it's not Damascus. It's Damascus, or Damask. So we have Damascus, and in between Damascus and Ammon, which are the two great city-states of the southern Levant. And no other city-states come anywhere close to the dominance and population and power that these cities achieved. We can see three different lands. Go back on the right to Damascus. up from the letter D toward the sea, you can see an area that is green. That being next to Lake Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, that's Golan. That's the Golan Heights. The remainder of that area within that dashed line, that is the Moab Plateau. That's Jetur. Down from there, and down from the Sea of Galilee, Lake Kinneret, down from Gilead, you see that large, dark green, brown landform. And that's entirely different than everything else you see in this region. To the left thereof, down from Gilead, to the right of Ammon, and to the left of that dark brown green area, you see a vastly different landform. Now, that's Kedem, which we're going to get to on the next slide. Now, on this slide you can see, if you look straight down from Ammon, look straight down from Moab, look straight down from Edom, all the way over to down from Gilead, you see a vast tan swath of land. This is the Moab Plain. This area is too far from settlements to be truly dominated at any time. So you can dominate the King's Road, which goes from Eilat through Edom, Moab, Ammon to Damascus, and all the areas in between. But you cannot dominate all day and all night the vast tan area to the east of them. This is integral to understanding the situation and the reality of transient migratory life in this region. Two reasons I am building this story slide by slide. In the end, there will be many words, and if I introduce all of the words all at once, it's going to be confusing as to what a person should look at any given time. For example, let's go to the far right where we have the word Damascus. Follow the letter D up, and in blue you see Jetur. To the left of Jetur, past Golan, is Gilead. Now, the area that we were showing as Gilead has a dashed line. Above that dashed line, between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, is the word Yabak. There's the Yabak again. Gilead is a landform. It is deeply incised by what we call, in English very often, the Jabbok, which is an extremely important watercourse. And it is so important that on either side, Gilead at times is referred to as one physiographic unit, and at times it is referred to by two different names. Back to the right of the Yabok, we see the Sea of Galilee. Down from there, which is in reality east, we see Golan. Golan at times is referred to as part of Jetur, and at times not. Therefore, I have put the name in white because it is somewhat of part of Jetur and somewhat not. Down from the Sea of Galilee, we see two names, one in red, one in blue. The first name is Bashan. That's later referred to as Bataniah. That is this area, its name and its identity before the Ishmaelites. After the Ishmaelites, this region is referred to as Naphish. Down from the word Naphish toward the bottom of the screen, halfway between Naphish and the bottom of the screen, is a very much more dark area. That's called the Jebel Druze. That is Nadab. Nadab means elevated. The name itself is the elevated part of Naphish. For this reason, the Bible refers to Jetur, Naphish, and Kedem in Genesis, and later in the Bible refers to Jetur, Naphish, and Nadab, because Kedem, as you can see, to the left of Naphish, is an area with much more of a pronounced affinity toward either Ammon or toward wilderness, a completely different area. Going back to Nadab, in between the Sea of Galilee and the bottom of the screen, continuing past Nadab, we see this vast basalt volcanic field. That is Mishma. That is the northern and eastern and northeastern transition zone between Ishmael, the east, and the Syrian desert. We see on this screen more instances of two names within one area. I'm not trying to make an unclear picture even more unclear. It's just one of those things where you have to understand how two realities and two names can occupy the same place. So let's go back to Damascus on the right. To the left thereof is Bashan Naphish, and Bashan Bataniah sometimes refers to the entire region of Jetur, Naphish, Nadab. So back to Bashan Naphish. To the left thereof we see two names, Manasseh hyphen Gilead. So that particular part of Gilead, which we often hear as Gilead, there's no E in there, it's Gilead. The half-tribe of Manasseh is referred to as the half-tribe because half of Manasseh is located on that side of the upper Yarden, the Jordan. To the left thereof is Gad, which is the actual pronunciation. We call it Gad so people don't get confused because we refer to God in English. This is not a term people use in other languages. Nonetheless, the tribe of Gad, which is actually pronounced God, is also the area of Sichon. Now, that's directly above, which is actually west of Ammon. Continuing the same direction to our left on this screen, I have Reuven hyphen Kedemah. So, at the time when Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh are occupying this area, you will see many maps which are confused and jumbled about what's going to be in the territory of these tribes. This is very much more of a simplified physical map. All cultural geography stems from physical geography. Simplify your understanding to these landforms. It will help you to understand the entire picture. And in future slides, I'm going to remove the two words. I just hope to let you understand how Manasseh and Gilead at different times occupy the same area. Gad and Sichon occupy the same area. Meanwhile, the area of Gad and Sichon is actually the southern part of Gilead. Now, the most important part of Gilead is the stream that bisects it, the Yabok. Water is life, Mayim is Chayim. This is the Levant. This is the Middle East. This is West Asia. Water is everything. To the left thereof again is Reuven, which is Kedemah, but only at certain times. At other times, Kedemah is part of Moab, part of Ammon. It's domineered and dominated by Assyrians, Babylonians. Kedemah is the most indicative transition zone in biblical history. Here in this slide, I want to discuss the concept of soft borders. Some of these borders are concrete, discrete, and physical, like Gilead is a landform. On the other hand, some of these are gray areas. And depending on whether a city or a state is waxing in power or waning, the borders are not always in the same place. In the very top left corner of this screen is Mount Sinai, and that is the region of Sinai. You can see to the right of the word Sinai a dashed blue line. This is a suggestion on a zone to the right of that dashed blue line as we go from the word Sinai toward the big blue sea that is the Great Sea, Sea of Peleset, the Mediterranean Sea. We see a very light tan area on the right, which is north of which another dashed blue line. To the right of that dashed blue line is the word Yehudah, that's Judea. This is another suggestion, and it's relatively accurate, yet still a suggestion of another transition zone. Down from that dashed blue line, we see the word Moab below the Dead Sea. To the left, again, we have good old Kenaz. And then another dashed blue line, because this one is extremely suggested, extremely non-concrete. Down from the word Kenaz, we get toward the Syrian desert, where vast amounts of the Syrian desert cannot be dominated by any individual, group, camel, donkey. This is powerful wilderness here. So whichever routes that Ishmaelite traders are using at that time, it also depends on, are the Assyrians coming through armed for war? When the Assyrians come through armed for war, nobody dominates the King's Highway except the Assyrians. The only thing more powerful than the Assyrians are the earthquakes of the Middle East. So I hope that you understand all of these dashed lines are suggestions of spheres of influence. Here is where we get to that point where there are so many names on this map that they become jumbled looking, and there's nothing we can do about that. They all combine to point out the site, situation, and interrelationships of names. So let's go to the top left again. Mount Sinai. From Mount Sinai toward Edom, that is Massa. To the right thereof, in the top center, where everything is colored quite tan because of that desert, that's Adbeel. So those are the streams, wells, water courses, and water sources, which are so pivotal when you bring trade from Edom unto Egypt, unto the Mediterranean, and unto places beyond. Massa and Adbeel are the two Yissma'eilite names of Sinai, everything south and west of Yehudah, Judea. Now, let's go all the way back to the left top corner of Mount Sinai. Down from there, across the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea, we see in red the word Midian. Continuing down into the bottom left corner, that 1/7 of the screen, that entire tan area, that's Mibsam. That's from spice. And then when you look at the word Mibsam, underneath me, the prefix me, you start to see green. These are the places which have been cultivated in the modern era. So several thousand years ago they would not have been cultivated like this, but this helps you to see water was accessible in that area. Hence, the spice road followed that route. So that's Mibsam. Bottom left corner, we're coming toward the center, we see that dashed blue line, which is simply a suggestion of where Mibsam would have been more dominant locally in comparison to, at the bottom center, we see the Google icon from good old Google Maps, my favorite website. To the right thereof, we see the words to Dumah, located inside of a light tan area. That is the Wadi Sirhan, the most important water source in eastern Jordan and the approaching Jordan part of Saudi Arabia. To the right thereof, which is north, we have Mishma, and up from Mishma we have the three, Kedem, Naphish, and Jetur. So this completes the scene of where are the different Yissma'eilite groups, how are they all related not only to each other, but to the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah, and to Midian, Edom, Moab, Ammon, Damascus, and all of these areas. Here I have removed those suggested borders because they are suggestions. This is all a continuous region, especially when you consider these were migratory people. Avraham in the Bible. Before you read the Bible, it seems to people that Avram, oh, he must have spent all of his time in Jerusalem, when in fact, the vast majority of Genesis, Avram spends in places that are not Jerusalem. Aram, Hebron, Be'er Sheba, even Shechem, these are places where Abraham is spending more time. These were all migratory people. The Kenites were actually, interestingly, migratory smiths. They had movable property, movable objects, and they got around just as much as shepherds and merchants did, because when you look at footage of war films, you see, okay, there are smiths there with the war campaign, with the war party, to make sure horses have horseshoes and blades on sickle swords and objects like that are sharp, that kind of thing. So, I'm going to be silent a moment so that this can all be taken in as where these names are, why they are located there, and the physical features which make them in those locations. Likewise on this slide, because of the scale of the map, something like Kenaz is so small here that if you have a border and a word across it, it's extremely difficult to see what the physical landforms are and how they relate to each other. For example, look to the far right and then allow your eyes to come just a couple inches, or if you like centimeters, around 10 centimeters to the left, where that dark brown, dark green area of Naphish, Bashan, Bataniah are. And you can see quite clearly how defined this physical region is. Then to the left of that is Kedem, and to the left again you see that gray, that's Ammon, the city-state. And you can see how these features have curved lines on the surface of the earth, which create areas that would later become culture groups. As I say, physical geography is the parent, cultural geography is the child. Cultures and languages and even metallurgy and botany, all of these things come from the physical surroundings. So I'm going to be quiet again so you can have a moment, or you can always pause and take a look at these physical features. So here we are back to a slide with the names. I'm hoping that your mind's eye is still envisioning and remembering at least one or more of the borders where you were looking. But you can still imagine them now. Those dotted lines and what they defined and how they differentiated and delineated the areas which are according to these names and the names according to those areas. There are a couple more slides on this presentation where we will wrap up. In this particular slide, I have added some features names in the top right quarter of the map. So, top center of the map, let your eye come down to the blue word. That's Adbeel. So, above Adbeel toward the border, that's Kadesh. That is Kadesh Nitzana, the Kadesh, which explains where the Abel Mizraim and Lahai Roi are located. So down from there we see Adbeel, down from there is Abel. So I did not spell it with an A on this slide, I spelled it with an E. It should be spelled with a schwa. It's the Abel. Down from Abel and slightly to the right we have Arad. Arad, Barad, Harad. This is going back to how do Kadesh, Atad, Abel Mizraim, Bered, how do they all relate to the Yissma'eilites? And how do the Yissma'eilites relate to Midian, Edom, Moab, Ammon, Damascus, and more? So at this point, you can see how do the Yissma'eilites relate to the known groups of the east. How do they relate to the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah? Now I have been telling you this whole time that I know how these all relate to Bronze Age cities. At this point you have to ask yourself, does this necessarily prove that Dan Fink specifically knows where Bronze Age cities are? No, I haven't told you where they are. Does it explain that Dan Fink understands exactly where and why? Not only all of the names of the Yissma'eilites, which had been unknown for 2,000 years, the Kenites, Kenazi, and the Kedemah. And if you look online, besides me, you will not find any identification of these groups and their locations, because I have understood how you find the location of every name, every word. Now, having completed the maps of Genesis is a great achievement, and it is. That's secondary to physical Bronze Age on-the-ground cities, which are going to be extraordinarily exciting. But that's secondary as well. As I have been saying, there is a larger historical, interdisciplinary realization. This is the big one that I can't wait to explain. Now let's get back to this map. We'll go back to the top center of the screen, down to Adbeel. To the right of Adbeel is in white Peleset, that's Philistia. Down from there we have Yehudah. To the right we have above it Canaan, that's Canaan proper, that's the Canaan plain. Down from there is Samaron, which is Samaria, it's Samaron. To the east thereof is Gilead, and to the east thereof is Sidon, which is Phoenicia. And now we go to the last slide, where I present all of these images in the most combined fashion. I hope you have enjoyed all of these presentations. I truly look forward to explaining the exact nature and significance of my further realizations. Thank you. Once again, my name is Daniel Adam Fink. Let's get digging. This is the map of the boundaries and locations of the states of the east, Yissma'eilite provinces, and the Kenites, Kenazi, and Kedemah.